The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. Brand new year, 2026. And even though today is only January 5th, we already have a flurry of activity to talk about. We were kind of whimsical and magical and holiday consumed and talking about all the great things that are happening. But now we got to get back to business because the leader of our country, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, had a big gala down at Mar-a-Lago, had a bunch of dignitaries there. Good time was had by all. And the next day, he got back to business. So I guess it's about time for me to do so. I'm Kip Keefer. You're listening to Need to Know, our first edition of this year. I appreciate everybody who tunes in and wants to hear my thoughts. And I'm going to warn you, I am not holding anything back on this broadcast. I am going to bring it over the next 20 or 25 minutes because I've got a lot to say over what's happened just in the last 48 hours and the predictable pattern it takes, both good and bad. So let's get right to it. You know, as I watched events unfold, starting late Friday night in the middle of the night, and people's tell me all the time that want to coach me and handle me, that I'm an insane individual. When I turn in at night, which is usually in kind of not the wee hours they used to be, but I'm usually shutting it down 12:30, 1 a.m. I always have my TV on as I go to sleep because, and I don't have the sound up very much, so I'm not really focused on it. I don't like pitch dark silence, whatever. I know that's better for my sleeping pattern. And that's what all my advisors and handlers and people that know better than I know for myself tell me, that you wouldn't have any sleep problems if you just would take some stuff and lay down and turn off all the lights and be in total darkness and silence. Well, all that does is activate my mind to think about everything that I don't want to think about when I'm trying to go to sleep. So I try to stay up as late as I can to not have that problem. But having the TV on pays off about 4 or 5 times a year because, folks, shit happens in the middle of the night. And if I just would have done what all of my handlers prescribe and turned off the lights and been oblivious, I would have missed one of the bigger events of recent years, not to mention the brand new year, when the U.S. military, all of our covert organizations, CIA, national security people, all executed what was a perfect mission into Venezuela overnight on Friday, and not only took out a lot of strategic places and jammed a lot of protective situations that were put in place for one purpose and one purpose only, to shield a criminal cartel dictator who has been wreaking havoc in our neck of the woods, in our hemisphere, for the past 10 or 12 years, after inheriting the mantle from the guy who turned the tables on Venezuela, transforming it from a prosperous, resource-rich nation. His name was Hugo Chavez. He sold the same kind of snake oil to the Venezuelan people, to people that were not in the best of circumstances, but were still living in a country that was a democracy, a country that had thriving industry. He sold them the bill of goods that we're watching these people do try to do to Americans with some degree of success, as the mayor of our biggest city is now cut from the same cloth, a Democrat socialist, which I've said it many times, and if you're a frequent listener, I apologize for the redundancy. You can't be a democratic socialist. Socialism has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with the rule of the people or the will of the people. It has everything to do with nefarious, power-hungry people who think that the only way to run the lives of citizens of a country is to impose their will because they know better, and big government is the solution. It is this collectivism idea. Everybody ties for first place. Everybody is the same. Nobody should have opportunities to live their dreams or have individual liberty because they're not capable of doing that. It is the system. It is the government that dictates and mandates everything. It has been tried all over the world for centuries. And guess what? There's one common denominator. It never freaking works. It can't work. You cannot ask people to produce while others just jump on the bandwagon. They're promised everything for free. They're promised this great life that, you don't have to bust your ass. You don't have to assert yourself and find what you're good at and find your niche in society. You deserve to be taken care of by the government. We all are in the same boat. Well, that same boat does not include the people selling that snake oil, because the elites then become the power base. They become the people that call all the shots while they reap all the benefits. They don't live on the level that they expect you to accept or the producers to accept. Their answer to finance all that are people that are thriving and doing well. Well, they just need to pay their fair share. They need to finance everything. And eventually those people get fed up, walk away, move other places where they have some protection, leave the country entirely. It is the ultimate system of failure. And if we need some evidence of it, Venezuela is the best, the most graphic example you can possibly come up with, that eventually you run out of other people's money to spend. Venezuela has become, pardon my French, cover the little guy's ears, a shithole. It was thriving 25 years ago. Enough people in Venezuela bought the BS being shoveled by Hugo Chavez. He came in, immediately imposed this elite, government is in charge of everything mentality. The socialist playbook. It starts off as socialism, but then becomes sheer Marxism. The government becomes the owner of everything. It controls all the means of production, and it starts dictating to its citizens what they can and cannot do, and tells them, hey, okay, inflation is out of control. A loaf of bread is $15. Suck it up. You're all part of this great collective effort we're all doing to take care of each other. And it's just utter BS, because those people aren't living. The people calling the shots aren't living in that world that they're telling their citizens to live. So let me get back on track and talk about what really gets me as we have watched what's unfolded here. And if you've missed it, if you were in a euphoric state of holiday celebration, not only did we take out main infrastructure in Venezuela, we executed a perfect operation to go and arrest and confiscate a right now indicted felon, an enemy of our country, who in 2020 was charged with 5 or 6 counts of various violations. He is a fugitive from justice. Even the Biden administration, the do nothing, sit around with your hands in your pocket, yelling constantly as the country started to slide into an abyss of misery, all is well. Even the Biden administration increased the bounty on this guy's head, $25 million for his capture, $25 million to bring this fugitive to justice, who's the dictator of a country, because when Hugo Chavez died of brain cancer, this guy was one of his main operatives. His name is Nicolas Maduro. Maduro was in the part of his government that is always part of these kind of governments, and calling it a government is wrong. This is a dictatorship. This is a ruling junta, and this guy was the biggest thug in his brood, because his job was to bring in revenue and exploit the citizenry of Venezuela by taking their resources and transforming it into criminal enterprises that are so lucrative around the world, predominantly drug trade. And I thought immediately about, and you've been hearing the stories at the end of the year and all the voices of dissent who are always there, and we'll talk about them in just a minute, as we were starting to take aggressive action and stop this crap before it even gets here. Trump was blowing boats out of the water from these rogue countries, Cuba and Venezuela and even Pacific Islands, who are producing this poison. Mexico also channeling it through these means and delivering it by sea, since we have absolutely slammed shut the borders under the Trump administration. Nothing is coming in. And so boats and the sea were becoming the conveyance method to get this poison into the country. All kinds of illicit drugs, including the deadliest of them all now, fentanyl, which is highly addictive. And if you take it, you are going to eventually die, because if it doesn't kill you, if you have the constitution to fend it off, just small amounts of fentanyl and this synthetic fentanyl. And I don't know, I'm not a chemist. I don't know how to explain it to you, but it is basically a conception of the Chinese government, who is partners with the good old Nicolas Maduro, the heir to the throne after Hugo Chavez died, who took away any semblance of it being any kind of government that the people had any say so. They had a recent election in Venezuela, I think a couple of years ago. Every poll suggested that the opponent that was running against him, a lady named Machado, who has been an outspoken critic, and how she stayed alive, I don't know. I don't think she spends a lot of time in the public eye there, because they would have taken her out before. But the election results look like everybody said this is an absolute slam dunk. They're going to get this thug out of office. Maduro announces the next day, we have had a scintillating, huge win in the election here. We have been elected by a 79% margin. People that worked in the polls, people that voted, knew damn well that that was total BS. And remember what I've told you, all the years of after the socialist movement, the people's uprising in Russia in the early 1900s, after that happened, the socialism, collectivism quickly became Marxism, which transformed to full-scale communism, and that is what happened in Venezuela. And remember what Joseph Stalin, who was the most corrupt premier person, head of a government probably ever fostered, even worse than Adolf Hitler in the final analysis, because he murdered so many of his own people. Any dissenter, take him out and shoot him. That was the plan. Joseph Stalin said, don't ever lose sight of this fact. It's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. And that is the norm in Venezuela for the last 35 years. A country once thriving, once prosperous, has become a literal hellhole. You can't afford anything. The quality of life is third world at best. It is so bad that people of any kind of means, I mean, even middle class people, have had to flee by the millions. They are repopulated all over this hemisphere now. Many in the Miami area who had to bail just like the Cubans did in around 1960 when Fidel Castro took power. There are tons of Venezuelans spread out through Central and South America. They had to get out of Dodge, not only because they were being abused and the government was a threat to their daily lives every day, but it got so bad and things got so horrible that even people of modest means were seeing family members kidnapped and held hostage. You have over 150, I think, between 150 and 200 Major League Baseball players in America playing in the big leagues. They had to get their families out those first few years. It was nightmarish because these guys are making a big living. Their families and even fringe relatives were targeted because they had money to buy them back. And it's become so bad. There are a couple of really prominent, successful horse trainers. Venezuela used to be a huge horse racing country. And these guys have also had to flee Venezuela and come and resettle in America to pursue their craft because, you know, if you made any money at all, you were a target. This is how horrible of a down the drain situation that's occurred there. And meanwhile, one of the reasons the country was thriving because there were so many good jobs and good opportunities in the private oil business. Venezuela, one of the richest lands resource for crude oil in the world, and all the big companies, Exxon and ConocoPhillips and Chevron, all the big American energy companies were there. All of them developed state-of-the-art facilities to take advantage of the greatest treasure that was beneath the surface in Venezuela. Well, when Chavez took over the government, he seized all of those private entities financed by billions of dollars of American investment. He kicked all of those oil executives, all of they were just removed from the country. And it was like, screw you, Exxon. This is our land. This is our oil. I know you developed it. You're the one who was making it happen. You were the one who was enriching our country because it wasn't like Exxon was taking the oil and not compensating the Venezuelans for it. There was a deal in place for all of the investment that the government and the citizenry of Venezuela got the oil. Chavez was standing up telling people they're stealing your oil. They're taking our best resource. And he kicked all those companies out, American companies that had contractual agreements. And what was their recourse? Their government didn't do anything about it. Presidents condemned them, a long line of presidents, not just Democrats, but Republicans. They had ostrich policies on this. They condemned it. They put a bounty on the head of the leaders, but they did nothing. They sat there on their hands. They watched the Venezuelans taking the oil that we developed in their country and we're sending it all over the world to our biggest enemies, Russia and China and countries that were hungry to buy it, that would deprive our partners of those revenues. Iran also in this boat, of course, selling to countries like India that are energy starved and other places in the Far East. The bottom line is, this has been going on for a long time, and it is getting worse because now, all of a sudden, when Trump came back into office and the ostrich policy of this country, just hoping it would go away, let's stick our head in the sand, and maybe in 10, 12, 15 years, something will happen. Maybe there'll be some cataclysm that will change world events. But that's not what's happened. And finally, with the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians and all of these bad actors popping up in these countries, and we've dealt with it in Cuba. It's the same thing that happened there in the late 50s and in the early 1960s. American presidents, John Kennedy tried in the first days of his office to liberate Cuba. It was poorly planned. It was an absolute disaster, the Bay of Pigs. And every president since has not taken definitive action to address that situation. But now in Venezuela, because the bear was poked enough by Maduro, who was defiant and said, I'm going to partner with whoever I want. I'm going to sell my oil to whoever I want. The people in Venezuela had bailed. The country is in terrible shape. Donald Trump had, when he came into office, set the stage with his early calculations with the idea that this was going to end. This madness had to stop. Venezuela is living in our neighborhood, and they're inviting every nefarious enemy and horrible scourge that's on our planet in to be partners with him. It had to stop. And on Friday night of this past weekend, it did stop because Donald Trump sending in an elite force of Army Delta Force guys executed perfectly a plan that Maduro, surrounded by Cuban security, because that's his big BFF, he's supplying all the oil reserves and all of the support for Cuba. In exchange, he thought he was secure because he had Cuban security experts watching his back, guarding him 24/7. But the U.S., with our superior intelligence and mobilizing all of these forces that have had to sit on their hands through all these do-nothing administrations, Trump developed patiently a plan where Maduro felt secure with his secure locations and moving around. This is how Castro avoided the American hand for years, but Maduro wasn't as good at it as Castro, because on Friday night, an elite force who, fueled by tremendous intelligence, figured out exactly the movements of this guy, his patterns. And after he had gone to bed at 2 a.m. local time in Venezuela and was sound asleep in his bed, the Delta Force snuck in to the wherever the location he was and executed perfectly a mission to arrest Maduro and his wife, who is also indicted, who has been a key figure for years in running this criminal enterprise of, again, the thievery of American resources, a partnership, a broken agreement in a legal entity partnership, and most grievous was the drug trade. They had become one of the largest drug cartels, and his partners, the people Maduro had on his payroll, were the worst of the worst as far as people in that country. Trende de Agua, who he opened the prison cells, let out the most vicious, heinous criminal gangs, prison gangs, who rule with just brutality and just horrendous force. And that's who, when the border was wide open, dispatched by the tens of thousands, Trende de Agua into the United States to distribute drugs, to make it really pay off for the Venezuelan government drug trade. When the government, the dictatorship that's in charge, is running one of the biggest drug operations in the world, and the biggest customer is the United States of America, major action had to be taken. Can you imagine being one of the hundreds of thousands of parents or family members in this country over the last 7 or 8 years, maybe even 10 or 15 years, that have gotten that late night phone call that your son, your daughter, your nephew, your brother, your father, they are dead now because they have died from a drug overdose, fentanyl poisoning, whatever nefarious means. It has claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And in this country, it is by far the most heinous thing that we've allowed to continue. It had to be cut off. It had to be stopped. And people in Venezuela and all these other countries that are our enemies are benefiting and profiting from it. Donald Trump drew the line and said enough. And he gave Maduro a chance. He's been talking to him. He said, look, the curtain's coming down, dude. You've got two choices. You can gather up whatever kind of stuff you can fit into, whatever you can transport your ass out of there and get lost. Go take shelter in some other country. But this is over. We're not going to do this anymore. You're not going to be in our neighborhood involving us in all of these things. Your days of killing Americans for profit are over. And he gave him a chance to get out. Maduro, thinking he was the strong man, the Iron Man, the elected president of his country, of a sovereign nation, which is an absolute joke. There's over 55 countries in the world, somewhere between 55 and 60 countries in the world that do not recognize him as the elected leader of that country, including the United States of America, including under Democrat administrations, Obama and Biden. This guy is not recognized. So all of these voices you're hearing, this is a sovereign nation, this is the duly elected leader, this is a criminal enterprise that Donald Trump has undergone, taking this guy out of the country. And let me just go ahead and make sure you understand. That's exactly what they did, in his pajamas with his old lady, who's also an indicted criminal. Before they could blink, they were in a van being transported to a helicopter, taken out to an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Caribbean, and they went from there sound sleep to a jail cell on a ship, transported the next morning. Right now, they are in Brooklyn, New York, in a jail cell, awaiting a hearing this morning that's probably happening as we speak, to inform them of the charges against them. What a 24 hours, and what a complete, arrogant, stupid idiot who was given a chance to get out of harm's way, and now he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail because you can bet your bottom dollar they've got evidence on top of evidence on top of evidence to convict this guy. Now, let me tell you the reaction of two groups of people real quick as we start to wind this down. Maduro's in custody. He is going to be tried for his crimes, and he's going to be convicted. We've seen this movie before. Manuel Noriega was doing the same thing in Panama 35 odd years ago. And the United States took action and went and incarcerated him. He spent the rest of his life in jail and died recently. There's a precedent for this. This is not nation building. This is not invading a sovereign country. This is removing a criminal element who's an indicted felon, and it is high time it happened. There is one group that is absolutely ecstatic today, and it is all of these displaced Venezuelans who love their country and have yearned for the day when somebody would get off their ass in our country and say, enough, you are a blight in our neighborhood, and this is going to be over with. They've waited for 25 years, and Donald Trump did it this past weekend with the cooperation of the best military in the world. Marco Rubio, also Secretary of State, has been a rock in this. We started this situation last year when Trump took office. We're right back in Panama. Panama had allowed China to kind of lurk and get into the scene there. They had made some backwater deals, and they had a government that was corrupt enough to welcome China into their midst. China was controlling a large portion of the Panama Canal, which is the link, of course, between the Atlantic seaboard and the Pacific. You used to have to go down all the way to South America and go around the Panama Canal, which the Americans built every dollar of it, every bit of labor of it. Thousands of Americans died building it, but Panama had basically entered into a deal with China where they would control that, and they would control shipping and who got to use it and how much it was going to cost to do that and what could be transported through it. And Donald Trump sent Marco Rubio in the early days of his presidency to Panama and said, this is over with. We're cutting you off from all aid. We are not going to support your country anymore. And we built this canal. Jimmy Carter stupidly gave it to Panama in the 1970s. Donald Trump says, guess what? If we have to come take it back, we're taking it back. It is America's. We built it. It's on it goes through your land, but just try and stop us. You either kick the Chinese out and start working with us, or we're taking action. And they were, unlike Maduro, smart enough to say, this guy means what he says. And that's the bottom line. Any enemy of this country, you don't have an ostrich in the White House anymore. This guy's head's not in the sand. He's going to take the leadership role. He's not going to be afraid of the implications. He's not going to be afraid of the voices. There's Democrats. This is an illegal act. He went in and took out a duly elected leader of a sovereign nation. This is the worst thing. This makes America look terrible. They're all crying that tune, despite the fact that their pseudo administration under Joe Biden put a $25 million bounty on this guy's head. They're only doing this for one reason: Trump delusion syndrome. Anything Trump does, even if it's the best thing in the world for this country, the devastation of the Iranian nuclear facility back in the summer, same thing. You can't do this to a country. He just can't do it. It's an illegal act. It's a violation of all the charters and all the agreements we have with people around the world. Donald Trump is representing the interests of the United States, and you and me and even the idiots that are so despondent over the fact that he's the president and is actually displaying actual leadership. But they're despondent not by what he's doing, but by the fact that as long as he's in control, they are not. And when they're not in control, that shuts down the spigot of revenue that was pouring in, that continues to get elected these people who don't have your best interest at heart and don't have the best interests of your country. They are protecting their own interests of wealth, power, and control, and that's the way it's done. You've got all of these protesters yesterday, and it was kind of pathetic because in short time, I guess they could only round up 75 or 80 of them. But if you look carefully, it's the same people every time, the same cast of bedraggled fringe characters out there banging their drums, saying their pre-scripted, stupid, whatever, the chants, where one person says something and everybody repeats them like a bunch of parrots. It's absolutely ridiculous. These people don't know foreign policy from an insurance policy. They don't know anything about geopolitics, but it's the same cast of characters. And guess what? All of them, hours after this happened, had these beautiful pre-printed signs protesting the American action. They're all carrying around all of this paraphernalia. A lot of them are wearing the same T-shirts. They're cranking out this stuff immediately. These people, if you look at them, don't have 50 cents. I bet they don't have bus fare to get there. They probably hope Mondami's new policy of free bus rides will help them with their transportation budget to get to the protest. It's not these people that are doing this. And if Pam Bondi, our Attorney General and the Department of Justice, if she would get out of the beauty chair that she sits in 5 days a week so she can look glamorous on Fox News, which is the only thing she cares about as being Attorney General. Pam Bondi, get off your ass, follow the money. It'll take about a half hour. You'll find out who's financing all of this ridiculous protest of moves that are made to make this country stronger and freer and safer for American citizens. And that's exactly what's happening. In 1823, a president by the name of James Monroe, who a lot of you probably barely even heard of, James Monroe saw what was happening after we won the Revolutionary War. We beat the British back again in the War of 1812 when they tried to reassert themselves on our new country. And in 1823, James Monroe issued the Monroe Doctrine, which basically told Europeans and anybody else from around the world, don't F with the United States. Don't come here. Don't try and take advantage of all of these places that were colonized before, all of these new countries. They were already trying to impose their will to keep their thumb and one foot firmly planted in the Western Hemisphere. Monroe said, "You come around here, you're going to suffer the consequences." And America was already a growing power at that time. That was enough of a threat to keep that kind of interdiction from happening here. And for Donald Trump to come back and say, we are going to reapply the Monroe Doctrine because it still stands. It is still policy of the United States. You mess around in our hemisphere, you're not going to last long. And we're not going to tolerate anybody partnering up with our enemies and threatening our livelihood and our country and our safety and our well-being, killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens by letting the free flow of this poison come into our country and kill our citizens. Enough was enough. The line was drawn. And it is now an edict that everybody in the world, and I have one message before I leave here. The first person to condemn this thing was Kami Mondani, the mayor of New York, who has no platform to have a voice in this. He's immediately condemning it because his socialist pal down there in Venezuela is now in a jail in his city in Brooklyn awaiting trial. And it's a blow to socialism because Mondami and everybody else who is perpetrating this fraud, that this is the direction we need to go. And the idiots in our country that are stupid enough not to know anything about anything and support this guy when he to grand cheers the other day says, it is time for the rugged frigidity of individualism to give way to the warmth of collectivism. Collectivism, folks, is a myth. Collectivism is BS. It's not collectivism because they're not part of the collective. The people calling the shots are elite and above, and they're making all the decisions, and they're hoarding all the resources while everybody else has to live in squalor and poverty and no opportunity. It is hilarious to me, the correlation between individualism, which what this country is founded upon. Everybody has the right as an individual to develop their lives and pursue their dreams. And he is advocating the warmth of collectivism, which is everybody ties for first place. But really what that means is everybody ties for last place. If you want to live in a hellhole third world country, support this socialist movement because we keep seeing what it really is and eventually what it evolves into, which is corrupt criminal societies that are only designed to channel all the resources and the wealth into the pockets of the ruling class. And that's what it is, and that's what it's always been, and that's what you need to know. Back with more next week. We will follow the events of the day. Hope something was said was profound enough to just provoke thought from you. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just telling you, think for yourself. Don't listen to the mainstream media. Oh, this is terrible. This is an illegal act. We invaded a sovereign nation and took their president. No, we captured a criminal with a price on his head that before this administration, in the previous administration, imposed a $25 million bounty, and nobody said a damn word then. It's time for everybody to wake up and see what's going on. I'm Kip Keefer. We'll see you next week on Need to Know.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.